So let us look at President Tinubu, of course, leading Nigeria and leading ECOWAS as well, and how so far he has handled this issue. A lot of stakeholders have come out to say, from the Nigerian end of the conversation, that we are not ready for war. People have suggested to him stuff to pay attention to give more attention to, instead of, taking the force, the Nigerian forces, of course, Nigerian armed forces and the ECOWAS to war in Niger, and how that wars never end well. There's been new developments, actually. We'll get to talk about that. But we want to, get your reaction on, how this issue has been handled so far by our president and, of course, the ECOWAS heads of state.
Okay, once again, thank you for having me. I think for me, the way the Nigerian president will handle it, I think is coming with misreaction. Because on one hand, we have a situation where Nigerians are against the use of military operation in Niger. I think the reasons are not far-fetched. But however, I think he's looking at his position as a democratically elected president. And what does this portend for ECOWAS sub-region? And this thing happens under his watch. So for me, I think diplomacy is the way to go. Because I believe that life is sacrosanct. And I believe that if you are planning to go into war, you may not know the end. We are all witnesses to how the Russia-Ukraine started. As we speak, the world is still battling with it. And again, I think we should all realize that even if you go into war, it will definitely come back to a round table for you to resolve it. But again, I think the coup plotters themselves, the coupists, are becoming too stiff in their position. Though, like what you said, that we are hearing some news that they may have opened door for negotiation, though you say we'll subsequently go into that. But I believe the way to go is sanction. Though the sanction itself is having some negative effect. We have a situation where even as 2 days ago, there were apprehension that even Nigerians in Niger are living under fear that their hosts are becoming hostile and there may be likely attack on Nigerians. And the reason may not be far-fetched. It may be linked to the decision of the federal government to impose those sanctions on Niger. Don't forget that Niger is a landlocked country. And almost 90% of what comes into that country through importation comes to Nigerian ports. As at the last count, we understand that about 1,100 trucks were waiting for clearance from Nigerian authority to go into Niger. I don't think they have gotten such clearance. So I think that does explain the reason you see Niger citizens being hostile against Nigerian citizens.
Which can, easily develop into something worse. I was talking with someone earlier in the week, last week, and, I was like, we share borders with these people. And we have, like, the land mass between us and Niger is very thin. The guy was saying we almost don't have a border. It's like from just open one door, you're in Niger and
no, the point is correct, because I have experience of Jigawa State.
Okay.
And where Nigeria border with Niger, the local government is Megatre in Niger. Sorry, in Jigawa State. As the climate, the topography is the same thing.
So where I was going with that is, how porous that those borders are. We have lots of Nigerians in Nigeria living, faithful lives, trying to make a legit living for themselves. So are Nigerians also in Niger. So if this were to culminate finally into a war, is never going to end well with, either of the countries, and that is definitely going to affect an economy that is already wobbly. And you just mentioned how that Niger is landlocked, so this is a very dicey situation. You've mentioned diplomacy and having conversations. Nigerians only just recently said, okay, we're ready to talk, and they have defied every sanctions that has been put on them when sanctions are not working. And they are only just saying they are open to conversations. And ECOWAS haven't even said anything about that. How do you react?
For me, I think the sanctions should continue, but I think the ECOWAS should review the area of sanction, because if it is becoming counterproductive, I don't think it is of essence. Particularly, some persons have argued that electricity, that you don't have to weaponize it against them, because if you have a situation where the citizens of Niger are in solidarity with the military, I think it's a very Herculean task for ECOWAS and the world. I understand that the world is having special interest in Niger, perhaps because they are the 7th largest supplier of uranium globally. But even at that, the question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we get to this point where after a military coup, the citizens are in solidarity with the military, even brutalizing the ousted cabinet members or the former administration of Bazoum? So it goes to show that democracy was not working. So I think we need to ask ourselves questions before any action we take. And though sanction is the way to go, diplomacy is the way to go, but I think there's a need to review all the sanction, diplomacy, and all that. Because if you understand that, even while the coup leader refused to grant audience to ECOWAS delegation, even the one from UN, the one from US, he refused to grant them audience. Sanusi, who went in his own capacity, had audience with him. So I think we should explore other options, look for people who have that capacity to mediate, to go and interface with them.
All right, now you've made mention of a key number of issues, which I'm going to take you on gradually. Now, you talked about the fact that economic sanction would have been the best way to go rather than the use of force, which of course has met various reactions. And let me remind you of what George Weah once said, recently though, but I'm going to paraphrase it, talking about military takeover. Some persons do not have that moral justification, especially looking at the fact that the way and manner they got into office is also questionable, which of course can also be compared to a coup. In that way, I'm paraphrasing it. Now, looking at it from the angle of the president, some persons are also of the opinion that this is not a war that concerns Nigeria. It's not in our territory. That's number one. We've got so many issues to tackle: economic issue, insecurity in the land, and of course, hunger in the land. Now, you're taking resources that should be used to take care of your own citizens to fight a war that is of a proxy. Now, looking at it side by side, that he shouldn't in any way be involving himself in such an issue, considering the fact that his emergence into office is being contested at the tribunal. What's your view about this? I
don't think the contention of his office is an issue. But as long as he was declared winner by the umpire, he was sworn in, until the court says otherwise, he remains the president. So his office being contested, or the process that brought him to office being contested, is not an issue in the first place.
So how about he being concerned about the issue that borders on Nigeria's economy than fighting a war that has nothing to do with Nigeria?
You are looking at it that it has nothing to do with Nigeria, but the government as an entity is looking at it, what does it portend for our sub-region?
What does it portend? But here we're talking about, sorry, you're talking about what does it portend, but this is a government who said we are in a dead situation economically. So where is the resources for that war going to come from?
Don't forget that I'm not praying for war anyway. In this kind of aggression, the West will even want to aid, be the one that will sponsor it, because they are more interested in the war more than Africa.
How about our foot soldiers?
The war do not come.
How about our foot soldiers?
No, definitely they will be deployed. But when it comes to resources to prosecute it, I think...
What about the logistics for these foot soldiers? I'm talking about their feeding and all that.
Okay,
where is the food going to come from?
See what is happening in Ukraine, both financially, weapon-wise. America, Britain, Germany, they have been of great help to Ukraine.
Do not forget that Zelensky at some point came out to say that he has been abandoned. Nobody's calling him anymore. Nobody's answering his questions. Nobody answers when he calls. And it was after he called them out. And if you looked at the last NATO meeting that they had, Zelensky was literally standing on his own by himself. That people said that picture was of a single story, but all of us cannot go to NATO meeting. And if somebody who needs you at a time, such a dire time, comes to your meeting and not even a single person could exchange a handshake with him, you want to replicate that in an African situation. Ukraine has resources on their own, judging that they are from the East. We are Africans and we know how we are. Do you really think that the West would want to get seriously involved if this were to deteriorate into a war?
They will, but I pray it does not deteriorate into a war situation because of their interests. Well, I don't think we should be fighting here in Africa. I think diplomacy is the way to go. I'm not particularly happy that military is taking over a country, because I still believe that the best, worst democracy is better than the best military rule, judging from Nigerian experience. Because if you look at even freedom of speech, gagging this press, you cannot compare what we have now with the military junta of Abacha, IBB and all that. I don't want to go into some alleged killings of journalists and all that have not been investigated anyway. So it's not an experience one we wish to go back to. But however, I think diplomacy is the way to go.